Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finnegan. Politicians from 9 countries gathered at Britain's Parliament in Westminster for a hearing on misinformation and fake news. They left an empty chair for the chief executive of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. His non-appearance, some suggested, said it all. They wanted to quiz him about his network's practices. Facebook has been heavily criticised over its use and treatment of users' data. It was left to the company's Vice President of Policy Solutions to answer the MP's questions. They wanted to know about political adverts and possible interference in the 2016 US elections and the Brexit vote. The company insists it complies with data protection laws, but admits that it has made mistakes.
We've never seen anything quite like Facebook, where while we were playing on our phones and apps, our democratic institutions, our form of civil conversation, seem to have been upended by frat boy billionaires from California. So Mr. Zuckerberg's decision not to appear here at Westminster, to me, speaks volumes.
We've damaged public trust through some of the actions we've taken. Again, just for the record, on the issue of the hiring of this outside firm, Mr. Zuckerberg himself said that was not what he expected of us. He was not personally responsible for the hiring.
Well, here's a reminder of how the story unfolded. In March this year, the New York Times and the UK's Observer newspaper reported that a British consultancy firm had acquired the personal information of millions of Facebook users. Help with the story was provided by a Cambridge Analytica insider, whistleblower Christopher Wiley. The allegation is that the data was used for political purposes linked to Donald Trump's 2016 US presidential campaign. Cambridge Analytica said the data was destroyed in 2015, but there are reports that not all of it was deleted. Facebook then confirmed that up to 87 million users' details may have been improperly shared. It promised improvements and that it would investigate all apps that had access to large amounts of information and restrict app developers' access to prevent abuse. All right, let's bring in our guests for today's discussion. Here with me in Doha is Preslav Nakov, who's a senior scientist at the Qatar Computing Research Institute at Hamad bin Khalifa University. From Berlin, we're joined by Gillian York, Director for the International Freedom of Expression at the Electronic Freedom Foundation. And from Cork in Ireland, via Skype, Aral Balkan, who's a cyborg rights activist focusing on social justice in the digital age. Welcome to you all. Aral, let's start with you. You've said before that surveillance capitalism has led us into a dystopia and that companies like Facebook, Google, Snapchat are factory farms for human beings. What did you mean?
So Facebook and Google are factory farms for human beings because that is their business model. What they do is they farm people. They don't farm our meat or our skin, but they farm everything else about us that makes us who we are as people. They track us to get this information. They profile us using algorithms, and they create these simulations of us, basically. These are what these profiles are, and they use that to manipulate our behavior. So this is a system that I call people farming, and this is the business model of mainstream technology today. And the system that we're living under is what Shoshana Zuboff from Harvard Business School calls surveillance capitalism.
And is this a problem?
Of course it's a problem, because it is fundamentally incompatible with human rights, and it's fundamentally incompatible with democracy when you have a handful of corporations that know everything about everyone and use that information for their profit and political motives. This is the exact opposite of democracy.
Gillian York, in terms of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, how are Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram and WhatsApp doing? Should there be more oversight of their policies by our elected representatives?
Absolutely. So, I mean, most of these companies are, I would say, not doing very well if we're measuring them up to human rights standards. I'm glad to hear I'll bring into the conversation. If we're to look at Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the ICCPR, we have provisions that exist. We have documents that have been, tested time and time again. But most of these companies make up their own policies, often on their own whims. I mean, Facebook in particular has a lot of policies that go well beyond what is recommended for freedom of expression, and these seem to be the whims of Mark Zuckerberg and the highest executives within the company.
So, Gillian, what are the dangers in regulating free speech on the internet and by companies like Facebook and Google, or at least allowing them to regulate themselves?
Well, I think we have some risks here. So, I mean, over the years, the general model has been one of self-regulation. We've, kind of taken a hands-off approach with governments and allowed companies to regulate themselves, but that has gotten us into a number of difficult situations. On the one hand, these companies are overly restrictive of speech in many different ways. On the other hand, we have situations such as what's happening in Myanmar, Burma right now, when it comes to promotion of genocide on the platform. And so the fact is, we can't trust companies to handle this on their own in a lot of cases. But at the same time, there are definitely concerns when it comes to allowing governments to regulate. If we have in Germany, where I am right now, we have the NetzDG law, which restricts the promotion of hate speech on the platforms and requires companies to take down that speech within 24 hours. But at the same time, now we're seeing more authoritarian countries adopt similar laws. And as you well know, hate speech is not always a clear definition, and some governments weaponize this against activists and dissidents and even journalists.
Preslav, a lot of your research has to do with fake news and how to stop it. Is Facebook a force for good in the world?
I think that social media fundamentally are democratic forces. So they have democratized content creation, so they are not bad by nature. It's just that, like any technology, they have been abused. And they have been abused kind of mostly by external companies, by Cambridge Analytica. And I think that the problem is that Facebook let this happen.
How dangerous, then, is fake news in general to our society?
Well, kind of fake news tries to attack kind of I mean, there has been a lot of influence on elections. This is what people typically think of. But it's really kind of tries to convince people that the society as a whole doesn't really function. So this is kind of the main thing that Facebook is, that fake news are trying to do.
Okay. Aral, Preslav was saying there that Facebook itself is not necessarily a bad actor. That's not something that you would agree with, is it?
No, not at all. Facebook is a bad actor, and that is the lesson we have to learn if we are to have any chance of regulating these companies effectively. Because our problem is that we think that Facebook is a good actor and they keep messing up somehow. And by messing up over and over again, they somehow make billions and billions of dollars. They're not messing up. This is their core business model. It is fundamentally incompatible with human rights and with democracy. So we have to learn this lesson, that these are not mistakes that are being made by Facebook over and over again. It is the way that they are designed. These are centralized systems. It's not the only way we can build technology. We can build peer-to-peer alternatives that are free and open source, that are interoperable, so they are owned and controlled by individuals, not corporations. We can build these alternatives. We're not building these alternatives because we're not funding these alternatives. All of the funding in technology today, 99.9% of it is going into venture capital funded startups which have the exact same business model as Facebook and Google. So that's our problem. We need to do two things. We need to regulate these companies effectively, and we need to fund the alternatives. We're doing neither of those.
Is this a technology problem, though, or a societal problem? I mean, I guess what you're saying is it's not the technology here that's at fault, it's society.
Well, technology is just an amplifier. Which ideologies is it amplifying? And today it's amplifying capitalism and a special type of capitalism, or late-stage capitalism, that we call surveillance capitalism. So that's what it's amplifying. That's how we're building the technology. The character of the technology that we're building matters. So we can build technology very differently depending on what our goals are. So again, we need to do two things: regulate and replace surveillance capitalists. We can't regulate because we're institutionally corrupt. We have lobbying, we have revolving doors, we have multi-stakeholderism, we have public-private partnerships. All of these are the same thing. The influence of corporate finance in public policymaking. Unless we can remove corporate money, the millions and millions these corporations are spending to lobby the people that should be regulating them. If the people who should be regulating them 2 years from now go to work for these companies, then we have a real problem here. We need to understand that they're bad actors. We need to combat institutional corruption so that we can regulate them, and we need to fund the alternatives, the ethical alternatives.
Gillian, is regulation the answer? And what Aral was talking there about political lobbying. How do you legislate for that?
As I said before, I mean, I think that regulation can be a double-edged sword, and I'm no expert on legislation, and I think right now as well in the United States, I don't see any real hope for regulation, at least under this administration. But I do want to make another point here, which is that, you know, there is an option for shareholder pressure, and unfortunately, Facebook is in a particularly unique situation there because of the amount of control that Mark Zuckerberg has over shareholders. I mean, there's very little way that Facebook can be accountable to its shareholders, and I think that, you know, there are some interesting things coming out of the pundit class at the moment. Margaret Sullivan last week in the Washington Post suggested that it's time for Mark Zuckerberg to step down as chairman. That's maybe something that we should be considering as well. You know, I don't disagree with everything that Aral has said here, but I do feel that there are measures that we can take immediately. There are harm reduction measures that can be taken to push these companies towards small steps that will help them become better actors.
Preslav, when does the fight against fake news impinge upon our right to free speech?
So I think that the call for regulation is something that any government regulation has to be done very carefully, because there can be unintended consequences. There have been unintended consequences in a number of countries, including Germany. So, you know, and we should be not really thinking about, people are talking about what can you do about Facebook or Twitter or Google. We should be thinking beyond that. We should be thinking what those companies might not be around in a few years, right? Is there a solution that is going to work in 10 years? Is there something that we can do that is going to last?
So what is the solution? Are you talking about media literacy here, or is there something else?
I think that, okay, so there are different things that can be done. You can think of fake news, kind of, let's say, false information has been around for quite some time. There have been tabloids and so on and so forth. This was never been a problem. The problem is that it has been weaponized. And so basically fake news is like spam on steroids. The difference is that spam, it would reach 10,000 people and die there, while with social media, it can be amplified, can be shared, it can eventually kind of reach millions, right? And the other problem is the extreme personalization, right? But the place where you have to hit it is the spread. And I can tell you that social media companies are already doing something about it, right? The next good thing that we can do is we can raise awareness, because if people know that they are being manipulated, this kind of half works.
So it is education, even though there may be technological solutions. It's education that is key.
So it's actually both of them, right? And social media are using those. So in some countries, Facebook is, when you are trying to share a fake news, is going to tell you, oh, this has been fact-checked by 2 independent fact-checking organizations. Are you sure you still want to fact-check it? They're also kind of downgrading them, kind of showing it with lower probability, lower in their newsfeed. And in my research, in our research in the Qatar Computing Research Institute, we are actually building news aggregator. Think of something like Google News that raises awareness, that actually tells you next to each article where this is likely to be propagandistic, hyper-partisan. Also kind of we are building media profiles so that you know how likely, how trustworthy this particular news outlet is, and also what is its leading political ideology, is it left or right. And Facebook is doing something similar. They are profiling all their users. They kind of have a trustworthy label on every single user.
Aral, I see you smiling there. We talked about some of the problems here. We talked about regulation being perhaps one of the answers, along with a more democratic, if you like, internet. Are Facebook, Google, Snapchat, are they too big, too rich, too powerful to be brought into line, to be regulated?
No, I don't think they are, but I think we need to also ask ourselves what we mean by regulation. Because when I talk about regulation, I mean anything that reduces their abuses currently. And all regulation is a short-term solution. So breaking them up, that's great. Anything that reduces their harm, that's great. Do not nationalize them, though. I keep hearing people say, well, let's nationalize Facebook. No, you know, the only thing worse than a corporately owned panopticon is probably a state-owned panopticon with an army attached to it. So no, let's not do that. But anything that reduces their harms right now. But again, we're not effective in that because our system is institutionally corrupt. I was recently giving a keynote at the Nordic Privacy Arena this month, and Facebook had a keynote there as well. So these are data protection officers. These are the people who should be protecting our rights, and still they don't think that Facebook is fundamentally a bad actor necessarily. They're putting them into positions of legitimacy at their events. So we have a very long road to go. I think part of it is public perception. The moment these companies become socially unacceptable, just like it happened with big tobacco, then we're going to make inroads into regulation. But we also have to understand what the nature of the alternatives we want is. So they have to be decentralized or peer-to-peer. They have to be free and open. They have to be interoperable.
Gillian, what are the things that should be uppermost in people's minds when they're sharing information or engaging with others on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, people first and foremost need to be considering their own safety and their own personal safety. And I mean, there are a couple of different kinds of there are a couple of different kinds of surveillance here that we're talking about. On the one hand, you have surveillance capitalism, as Shoshana Zuboff calls it, and that's really looking at the ways in which advertisers and other actors are taking our data, utilizing it, weaponizing it, advertising to us with it. And then on the other hand, you have the other forms of surveillance that we're not talking about in this conversation so much. But I just got out of a meeting of a couple of days that had a number of different people from various countries around the world who are concerned about the ways that governments can access their information. And I don't necessarily mean, through court orders, but basically, people have to think about the ways that they're sharing their information, even publicly on Facebook, even with groups that could be taken over by malicious administrators and things like that. So I think that we should really also, I mean, I don't want to put this on the individual, but at the same time, I do think that we need to take responsibility and ensure that we're not sharing too much with these companies. You don't have to give them your birth date. You don't have to give them your hometown. And again, that's not a call for personal responsibility over regulation. It's just to say that I think that the reality is that we need to be more cautious.
But that kind of takes the fun out of it, really, doesn't it? That's if you can't fully engage with the platform, then you're not getting your full worth out of it.
I mean, these platforms ceased to be fun for me a long time ago. As a woman on a lot of these platforms, I deal with a lot of harassment. I deal with all of these concerns about my own privacy. And so, are these platforms fun anymore? Why are we using them? I think these are all valid questions, and I'm glad to hear people talking about them.
Preslav, should the responsibility for flagging out, you talked about initiatives that Facebook and others have at the moment to flag up fake news. I mean, is it their responsibility to flag up whether something is true or not? Or is it, as we said before, about education?
So I think that Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg have been always trying to stay away from taking the responsibility and the role of becoming a ministry of truth. And I think they're right about it. I mean, it's actually hard for anybody to regulate what is true and what is not, right? Because actually, I think that the whole term fake news is misleading. It has been kind of abused by politicians. Some people have started using it in all possible meanings, including an extreme meaning like it's news that I don't like, right? Eventually, it doesn't really mean much. So in the European Union level, people prefer the term disinformation. And then there's disinformation, there's misinformation. So there's kind of a lot of gray area. Things are not really black and white. So it's not so easy to tell what is true and what is not.
But yeah, I mean, things are either true or they're not. I mean, how do you police the fact that there's a lot of stuff circulating on the internet that just simply isn't true?
So, in my view, we should be focusing on limiting the spread of misinformation and disinformation. We should not try to eradicate it. It's not eradicated in the mainstream media. It's not eradicated in the traditional media. It cannot be eradicated online. Think of spam again, right? Spam currently is under control. It's not completely eliminated, but it's at a manageable level. It's not where it used to be before. I personally believe that together with a combination of some legislation, of some internal measures taken by those social media platforms, and of some awareness by the users, eventually fake news are going to go the way of spam. They are not going to be eliminated, but they are going to be put under control so that whatever harm they do is not that big.
Aral, what are your thoughts on that? Are you as optimistic?
Well, I think we need to be very careful about what we're asking platforms like Facebook and Google to become, because we don't want them to become arbiters of the truth, because to a large degree, that is what they are already today and what they want to be. Remember that Facebook gives you a certain view of reality. That's what your timeline is. That's an algorithmic timeline. It's not every post that your friends have posted. It's what Facebook thinks you want to see. So in a way, they are a filter on reality for you. Google recently said that they wanted to switch from using PageRank, their algorithm, to using truth as their criteria for ranking searches, which begs the question, truth according to whom? And in this case, of course, it's truth according to Google Incorporated, to Alphabet Incorporated. And that is not the kind of world we want to live in, where truth is dictated by a handful of multinational corporations headquartered in the United States of America. This is not the world that I want to live in, at least. So we have to be very careful what we're asking of them. And again, let's ask the right questions. Is what we want a kinder Facebook, a kinder Google? Are we trying to reform them? Because factory farms are never going to become animal sanctuaries. Or do we actually want alternatives to these toxic businesses? If so, we need to fund them differently, and we need to incentivize the creation of ethical technology.
Aral, you talk about these alternatives. Do any of these alternatives exist now? Are there any safer spaces as far as our data is concerned that we could be getting involved with?
Yes, definitely. They're being created. So right now, for example, if you want to have a private conversation with someone, don't use Messenger because you can use Signal, for example, which is end-to-end encrypted, or you can use Wire, which is end-to-end encrypted. And these are both very simple to set up. They're on all the app stores. They're free as in freedom and free as in cost. And anyone can use these. And everyone doesn't have to be using them. Just use it with your family, use it with your friends, and it will grow organically. There's Mastodon, which is a free and open alternative, federated alternative to Twitter, where you can, if you want to, you can run your own twitter.com essentially, but it can talk to everybody else's twitter.com as well. It's federated. So some of these Mastodon instances might have 200,000 people on them. Mine just has me on it, but I can talk to everyone on any instance of Mastodon. And that gives me way more control and ownership. So these things are being built, but Mastodon was built by one guy in France in his 20s with no funding. You know, regardless of the fact that we're not funding these alternatives, they're being built. Imagine what would happen if we were using, for example, European Union funding and not using it for startups, but for stay-ups, for ethical organizations to create ethical technologies. We're not even considering this right now, and we must.
Gillian, do you agree with that? I mean, you mentioned the fact that you quite enjoy using Instagram at the moment, which of course is Facebook owned. Are there any other alternative platforms that you're using?
Yeah, I mean, I do use Instagram, and look, I mean, I don't take exactly the same approach as Aral, but I do agree with a lot of what he said here. I think that I don't use Messenger. I refuse to put it on my phone. I keep WhatsApp because there are a lot of people in countries that, you know, I'm still trying to move them over to Signal, but their families are on WhatsApp. And so I believe in taking a measured approach to this, but I think Signal and Wire are two fantastic examples of alternative tools that people can use. And I think that, you know, we can also be pressuring companies to reform while we're also pressuring for new funding. I think that, you know, when it comes to using Facebook, right now it's got more than 2 billion users, and in some countries it is unfortunately a cheaper alternative due to agreements that Facebook has made with telcos in those countries. Is that the world that I want to live in? No, but it is the reality. And so I think that while we also take Aral's approach and push for better funding of more ethical technologies, which I firmly believe in, we also need to be finding ways to rapidly reform these companies so that the most vulnerable users are not left behind.
All right, we're out of time. Many thanks indeed to all of you, Preslav Narkov, Gillian York and Aral Balkan. And thank you for watching. Don't forget, you can see the programme again at any time just by going to the website, aljazeera.com, for further discussion. Join us at our Facebook page, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, if you dare. You can also join the conversation on Twitter, our handle at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finnegan, and the whole team here in Doha. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again. Bye for now.